I'm Annette Insdorf, delighted to introduce Touch of Evil, a film that I have enjoyed teaching. When it was released by Universal in 1958 as the second half of a double bill with Female Animal starring Hedy Lamarr, the Variety Review called it confusing and arty. While Orson Welles' pulpy B-movie remains those things, it's also now a cult classic. The opening shot alone is worth the proverbial price of admission. You'll see how the unbroken take of over 3 minutes establishes the camera as the mobile narrator. As it moves from a close-up of hands setting a bomb, it creates tension and suggests the forces that tick away under relationships. As it rises over a car, into which a couple enter, the camera takes us into the Mexican border town that gradually fills with pedestrians and animals and another couple. Welles cuts only after a kiss at the border, which seems to engender an explosion. There's not only self-conscious virtuosity here, but the introduction of stylistic and thematic elements that will be developed throughout the film. Welles's casting is noteworthy. He needed a star to play Vargas. Enter Charlton Heston, cast somewhat against type as a Mexican, in addition to his other roles around that time of Moses and Ben-Hur. The casting of Janet Leigh as his wife leads to some intriguing speculation about whether Touch of Evil might have influenced Hitchcock in making Psycho with Janet Leigh less than 2 years later. Notice the circular motif on the motel wall, which would become part of the imagery of Psycho, culminating in the circular drain of Hitchcock's famous shower sequence. Marlene Dietrich, as Tanya, is atypically dark. This provides a contrast between the two women, one a light, innocent sexpot, the other a knowing, timeless madam. Since most of the other women in the film are strippers, we can see all the female characters as sexual fantasies. Welles plays Hank Quinlan, an overweight racist who happens to be the most compelling character. You might notice how the camera choices express the story and characters. A high-angle shot of Quinlan drinking Grandy's bourbon make him seem tiny, and later a low-angle shot of Quinlan under a bull suggests that he too is being prepared for the matador's kill. He's being obviously framed in two senses. On the other hand, Vargas is often presented in these wide-angle tracking shots, suggesting his ambitious mobility. Welles often uses subjective camera so that we see through a character's eyes, experiencing their disorientation, as when Janet Leigh, towards the end, sees a dead man's head upside down. The lighting itself is both self-conscious and narratively coherent. From the very beginning, the cinematography of D.P. Russell Metty often creates shadows in front of the characters. The moral ambiguity of one like Grandy, played by Akim Tamirov, is expressed by the intermittent light, the play of dark and light around him. Light is violence when Janet Leigh's Susie seems victimized by a man's flashlight before she throws a light bulb at him. The critic James Narramore wrote the following: "It deals with racism, police corruption, and sexual confusion in an atmosphere so gorgeously sleazy that the very air is filled with blowing garbage." Unquote. What fascinates me most is how Touch of Evil deals with a variety of borders. They are not only geographical, Mexico-US, but ethnic, Caucasian, Latino, with a curious alliance created between the Mexican-American Vargas and the Jewish character Schwartz against the racist cop. The borders are also moral, sexual, legal, and blurred. Ultimately, Touch of Evil suggests a border between civilization and primitive instinct. Welles crosses visual and narrative borders too. You're about to see not merely a linear story, but internal rhymes, like the two couples of the opening shot, or the dynamite of the first seconds connecting to the dynamite of a construction site later. The version we are seeing is the one that was reconstructed by the brilliant editor Walter Murch in 1998. You might know him from such films as The English Patient, for which he won editing and sound mix Oscars, The Conversation, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, The Godfather. He used a 58-page memo that Welles wrote in 1957 to bring the studio's cut in line with the director's original intentions. I think that today Welles's film, it's considered a fusion of pulp art and continental sophistication. The last film that he made in Hollywood, Touch of Evil, is recognized as one of the most formally rich American films of the late 1950s. Enjoy.